the best lessons I learned as a dungeon master was having the humility to change up a session. And I'm not talking about, adjusting my plans and expectations to the player's roles and actions, or listening to what they're theorizing about the plot and adding some of that to the story to reward them for paying attention. No, one of the best lessons I learned was to full on hit pause on the session and say, you know what? We're doing something else for now. What is the one thing that could be possibly worse than a bad session? A session that could have been good. Now, I know on the surface that sounds stupid, that's basically the same thing, but I genuinely do believe there is a distinction between these two outcomes for a session. Bad sessions, as we call them, really are just unfun sessions, but they're facilitated most often by a breakdown of communication. It is primarily an internal problem, something that has been brought to the table, something, someone, some want has caused the table to fall out of sync with itself. So that can lead to clashes between the DM and the players. It can lead to clashes between players and players. It can lead to just a general sense of standoffishness and bad vibes. But the thing about bad sessions is that whatever caused this disruption was probably always going to happen at some point. This just happened to be the session that lit that powder keg, and now it needs to be addressed and talked over. Communication needs to be restored, and then everyone can go along to having fun, or the party decides it's no longer the game it wanted to be, and people go their separate ways. Sessions that could have been good, on the other hand, I believe are an entirely different beast, because they are born of stuff that we can't control. Sudden changes in schedule, upsetting news, long and draining days at work or home. These aren't necessarily things that players have brought to the table, but nonetheless, they have followed them there. And more importantly, it's these kinds of things that can sabotage a session before it even had the chance to start. It's very frustrating to run or be part of a session where it's very clear, based on the momentum of the story, the rolls of the dice, or a given player's backstory, that one person was meant to be the focal point of this session, and they're just not there. I've had it happen both as a dungeon master and as a player, where just before the session is about to start, the spotlight player cannot attend anymore, and that's just life. Family obligations, schoolwork. One time a player got called to do a job interview 10 minutes before we were supposed to start. These things just happen, and despite all of your planning and scheduling, sometimes it means people aren't going to be able to make it to the session. But what does that mean for your plan for the session? Because of the improvisational nature of Dungeons & Dragons, the knee-jerk reaction is often to try and just roll with it, to literally treat this as something like a bad dice roll. And some DMs are going to be able to do this masterfully. Some DMs are going to be able to roll with this like it never even mattered. They're going to be able to explain away the absence of this up until then vitally important character, continue the story without making anyone feel like it was awkwardly rewritten, and maybe even find a way to tie it back to that character when they return in the next session scheduled in 4 months. But there is a lot of pressure put on a dungeon master in those moments to pull off that miracle rewrite and keep things chugging along as it's supposed to be, despite the very obvious glaring absence of one of the main factors, a whole player. And often, that attempt at just rolling with it is probably not going to pay off. Because you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Do you push forward with this story without the principal character you intended to participate in it? Do you shift the story so that it's happening vaguely around this event, but nothing's really resolved or progressed for 3 to 4 hours? Or suddenly, without notice, does it become way less important and there's this new plot threat issue that the party has to resolve that requires their immediate attention all of a sudden? In that game where the player had to go to the job interview, we were just about to set sail on a great adventure across the seas, but we couldn't leave until we squared away their debt with the Thieves Guild. And for no fault of their own, the dungeon master of this game didn't have anything prepared on the off chance that the key player of this part of the story would have to leave 10 minutes before the game was meant to start. So with the one character who was the most important to the story not available to progress the story, we kind of ended up just treading water for that session. We walked around the city, we talked to vendors, there was more emphasis put on trying to hire a crew and, navigate the shifty underbelly of the city, but it was very clear to everyone that this wasn't the way the session was supposed to go, and truth be told, it wasn't really all that fun. All of this is happening because of circumstances we couldn't control, and it's not even like the dice where we all willingly choose to roll and respect those results. And I think that's how a session that could have been good ends up happening. Because of one inconvenience, the entire session is going to play out fundamentally differently, really for the want of nobody. If the intended player was just present, then there wouldn't be that added pressure onto the DM. The players wouldn't be stuck in this sort of state of limbo where they're not sure exactly what to do, and the player would have gotten to experience the story that was entirely intended for them. So why not just do that? Why not just wait? Maybe this session isn't the day for this session to happen. And it was sessions like this that really just taught me to accept that some days the session that was planned shouldn't be the session that's played. Because at the end of the day, the whole point of having everyone over for a session at Dungeons & Dragons is not keeping to a schedule or sticking to a set plan. It is about having fun and everyone at the table enjoying themselves. Trying to improvise your way out of a bad hand of real world luck is a challenge, and yes, maybe you can overcome it, but what is it going to cost you in the long run? Yes, yay, we had another session, the story progressed a little bit more, except it didn't even involve the people the story was about to begin with. Again, when we are talking about a Dungeons & Dragons table that is operating out of good faith, that wants to have fun collectively and share a story that is told by all the participants involved, accepting and addressing the fact that there is an unfortunate detour can produce results that are just as fun and exciting, or even more fun and exciting than just bullheadedly trying to make it happen regardless of the tangible reality. Firstly, because being honest about the circumstances helps to take that pressure off a dungeon master and no longer asks them to rewrite an entire session in 10 minutes what it might have taken them an hour to design. Dungeon masters are only human. They are also only one of the people playing at this table, so having that open communication about what to do when there is a key central player missing from a session is a great conversation to have about how the party responds to these things going forward. It can be decided that people do really want to continue the story, and it's unfortunate that that player is missing, but they'd like to go forward. But that just means that the DM gets to voice whatever they need when it comes to prep or redesigning or reworking this session specifically. The players can also say that, yeah, it's fine that this player is missing. Let's just focus on doing something that's fun and exciting in the Dungeons & Dragons system. And when everyone acknowledges that this session isn't going to play out like it was supposed to because of unforeseen circumstances, it means that everyone can just embrace the fun, wacky, goofy side of Dungeons & Dragons, however they might like. The session effectively becomes a write-off. It can be whatever you want. You can just fully take your party out of this story moment and plop them anywhere along the timeline. It can be decided for whatever reason, you know what, the Thieves Guild can wait. We're gonna go to the casino. You can have fun with it. You can use it as an opportunity to flesh out backstory or party dynamic. You can have them say, hey, remember that time we got into that owl bear kart race? Play out that memory, quote unquote, and now suddenly you have a story for a town that maybe you haven't visited in-game, but because of this memory, you now have a little bit of lore. The last session I had in my current game was supposed to be this grand reveal of the party's druid and this curse that had been haunting her. It was supposed to be this grand moment where the player finally got to reveal the secrets that had been plaguing them since they had joined the party all those months ago. And this was a backstory that the player and I had both been working on, that we'd both been building up to, and we both agreed that this was the moment, this was the session where it was going to take center stage. And when it was finally time, when the session was underway, and I teed up everything for them to knock it down, the session just wasn't going the way we wanted it to. It didn't have that chemistry, that energy, that excitement that we were hoping it would. I could have stuck it out. I could have kept going with what I had planned, with what I had written in my notes, but it didn't feel fun. So I checked in with the player. I saw how they were doing, and they told me that work was exhausting that day, that they'd just spent so much time talking to people that they felt socially drained, and they didn't have the energy for this moment. This was a moment we had both been planning. This was a moment we were both excited, and yet neither of us were having fun. So we just stopped. We told the rest of the table where we were at in terms of the plan for the campaign and the energy levels of the players, and we asked if we could revisit this moment at a later date. And they said yes, and we spent the rest of the session playing out a pub crawl that the party had went on a couple sessions prior. And it was great, and it was fun, and they made some money, and to me, it saved the session. And the plan for the next session is to go back to that moment, to revisit it, to flesh it out and give it that chemistry, energy, and excitement that we know it can have. And we know it's going to come from a place of fun, not obligation, not schedule, not circumstance. D&D is a game about many things, but at the end of the day, it is still just a game. but because of all the different outlets and avenues and creative forms of expression, philosophies, interpretations, understandings of the game, it becomes very easy to get lost in the weeds of what to do in difficult situations. And I genuinely do believe that is one of the reasons why so many people forget in the moment of these games that you're just supposed to have fun. And when you're trying to navigate a web that is formed from different characters and backstories, different expectations and wants, and different schedules and times, that understanding the break as a tool in your toolkit, as not the end-all be-all of what to do in a session, but just some way to take the pressure off everyone, to sit back, relax, and enjoy, is a good thing. You don't always need to pause or completely jump ship at the most minor inconveniences all the time, but sometimes there is going to be a session that you're excited about, that you want to have happen, and you just see something throw a wrench into those plans. And why let that wrench keep a session that could be good as only could be? Or worse, let it devolve into a bad one. The age-old adage of Dungeons & Dragons is simple. If everyone's having fun, you're playing the game right. And that's the video for today. Let me know what you guys think about it, what you guys like to do when scheduling conflicts throw a wrench into your plans. If you have any fun tips or tricks for dealing with those sudden absences, or if you just like to get up to shenanigans during your downtime that people should know and be able to access and think about for their own games. I love to see what other people come up with, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video.